Right, before I get into the video, 42 subscribers. That's all I need to reach the magic 6,000. So please, if you're watching and you haven't subscribed, please be one of the 42 who gets me to 6,000. I'll be made up. It really helps me just by doing that, just by subscribing and watching, of course. But thank you if you're one of the ones that get me to 6,000, and thank you, of course, to everyone who's got me to this point in the first place. You're all brilliant. Thanks very much. Right, so on to the video. So, after the excellent and comprehensive win against Frankfurt, undoubtedly the best performance of the season so far, we have to replicate it in the bread and butter of the Premier League. It's yet another away game. Including this one, that's 5 of our last 6 games that have been away from home. Now, before I talk about Liverpool, let's first talk about Brentford. Now, I tipped them to go down because, once again, they lost a bunch of their star players, and really big star players. Lost their excellent manager, and then they promoted their set-piece coach to the first ever managerial position of his career. But they've done this for several seasons now, defying all expectations and the common belief that if you sell your best players, you're going to struggle. They keep selling their best players and they keep doing great. They sit 13th in the league, 3 wins, 1 draw, 4 defeats. They've scored 11 and conceded 12, but just as a comparison, we've scored 14 and conceded 11. So we're only 1 better than them in terms of goals conceded. Now, I haven't watched full games of theirs so much this season, but I did watch their game against West Ham because I wanted to see what we were up against. And bloody hell, they were excellent. They really were excellent. I mean, West Ham were dire, but I refuse to subscribe to the idea that any excellent performance is due to the inadequacies of the opposition. That charge was levied against us, against Frankfurt, and it's nonsense, really. When your team plays excellent, it's because they play excellent, irrespective of what the opposition does. So, against West Ham, away from home, remember, they had 15 shots in the first half, which was a joint record for them. And they should have scored 4 or 5 in the first half alone. And they ended the game with 22 shots and a thoroughly deserved 2-0 win, which honestly should have been a 5-0 win. And they didn't do it with counter-attacking football. They did it with possession-based, free-flowing football. They dominated the game. In fact, they had 57% possession with 400 passes and an 89% pass accuracy. That's good football right there. In midfield, they had, I don't know if I'm pronounced it right, but YNWA, something like that. And yes, Jordan Henderson completely dominated from start to finish. Henderson in particular looked reborn. His touch map, he was all over the pitch. It looked like that of a 25-year-old, not someone in his mid-30s. And up front, they have this Brazilian fella, Thiago, not our injury-prone one. Igor Thiago, and he is a handful, and Brentford will be looking to use him at every opportunity to get in behind this Liverpool defence that hasn't exactly been stellar so far this season. He's got 5 goals in 8 Premier League games so far, and another 1 in the Carabao Cup. He scored twice in their 3-1 win over the Manx. He also scored 18 in 34 games before he came to Brentford for Bruges in his last full season before he got an injury. And the season before that, he scored 16 in 34 games for Lugaretz. So he is a high calibre goal scoring threat. Now here's an interesting stat, and I know they're playing at home. This is a stat about playing away, but I think it tells you something about them. They are the only other team in the Premier League, along with Liverpool, who have scored in every Premier League away game in 2025. Now, yet this is at home, but what it says is that they are a consistent goal threat because they score in so many games. In their back line, they've got 2 ex-Reds, both considered surplus to requirements. Well, Sepp Vandenberg certainly was. Keller had to move on because he was too good, but wasn't going to displace Alisson. But they got both of them in defence. They've also got Fabio Carvalho, another one who didn't quite make it at Liverpool, but he scored this season an equaliser and the key goal in getting a draw against Chelsea 2-2. So along with Hendo, that's 4 ex-Reds all wanting to put one over on us, and they will. I mean, they'll all want to make an "I told you so" statement, and that includes Hendo because he wasn't happy the way he left the club. I think he felt a bit betrayed, but either way, he's going to want to put in a shift and he's going to want to do us along with the other 3. So, safe to say, these will be a threat. Now, I don't expect them to try and out-football Liverpool the way they did West Ham. I expect they'll concede possession, and this is on the break. And they have speed on the break. And they're more than capable of doing it successfully. We have to be ready for that, and we have to not give them turnovers while we're camped in their half and allow a sloppy pass to allow them to spring forward. And let's be honest here, this result will likely depend on which version of Liverpool shows up. The porous and hesitant one of the recent games, or the dynamic free-scoring one we saw in Germany. And that win and that display was absolutely huge going into this one. Had we lost that game, it would have been 5 straight defeats for the first time in 72 years. But it wasn't. It was a display worthy of this Liverpool team. And Brentford will have looked at that and thought, oh crap. Imagine if we'd have lost in Germany. They'd have been licking their chops, thinking this Liverpool team is done. We can turn them over. Now they're looking at that 5-1 win and saying, hang on a minute, we might need to be a little bit more cautious in this one. So, on to Liverpool. So even though Arne made several critically positive changes that proved so decisive in Germany, I'm still a bit concerned because of his post-game comments where he almost dismissed this far, far superior display as one in which we scored from set pieces and took our chances. And they were the big differences to the prior games. They weren't. A big difference was the reintroduction of Robbo. A big difference was the reintroduction of Ekitike. The big difference was Szoboszlai playing 90 minutes in midfield. A big difference was overlapping fullbacks who seemed to have the shackles taken off them and were very, very creative and joined those links between the defence, the midfield and the attack. A big difference was a dominant midfield display, and a big difference was the high press from the entire front 6. They were the big differences, not that we scored a set piece and that we took our chances. And I have to say, it was the impact of Jones, Szoboszlai and Weert in midfield, all using their skill sets to the absolute max. It was the impact of more aggression by the introduction of Ekitike, with Chiesa, with Frimpong until he got injured, a resurgent Bradley, and even a more aggressive display from Cody Gakpo. It all mattered and it all came together. And of course, there's the biggie. The big talking point, the big news item. This was all done without Mo Salah. And Mo was not picked because he hasn't earned the right to be picked. So what does Slot do this time? Now we're back to the Premier League. That's going to be interesting to see what he does. So in terms of the team, I'm not even going to try to pick an 11. I'm going to give you my thoughts on the options I think he has and what he should do in certain positions. So for me, the back 4 should be the one that played the majority of the game in Germany. Robbo, Virgil, Konate and Bradley. But will Slot reintroduce Kerkez? He shouldn't. Robbo was superb in Germany. His partnership with Virgil is top draw. They have an understanding, and he was also back to his creative best. That pass for Ekitike was absolutely brilliant, and he did a lot more than that creatively as well. But will Arne decide that 2 games in a matter of days is too much for Robbo and bring Kerkez back in? And he might well do that. In midfield, there's all sorts of options now. Jones, Szoboszlai and Wirtz, because of their display the other day, probably deserve a second consecutive game because they all excelled. And it worked. And I know I've called out the Jones-Wirtz combo as being too open, but I also said that we need, if we're going to play those two, we need the engine, the legs and the dynamism of Szoboszlai to be the third. And it worked at Street. I'll hold my hands up and say, you know what, those 3 really, really dominated that game. But if Ryan Gravenberch is fit, and I'm not sure as of recording this, will Slot really leave him out in a Premier League game against a team who can and probably will use counter-attack tactics? Or will he decide that it's Brentford that need to worry about us and not the other way around, and stick with that successful trio from the game in Germany? I don't know what he's going to do, if I'm honest. And by that, I mean he could go one of many different ways here. I'd be okay if he sticks with it. I'll also be okay if Jones is replaced with Gravenberch and we keep the other 2. I really do think we need both Szoboszlai and Wirtz to start, 100%. They were brilliant the other day and they're both class acts. And I don't think we can play a game without them right now. I think this is the Wirtz starting to show his stuff. 2 assists the other day. Let's keep him in there. And then, of course, there's also Alexis McAllister. He could take the 3rd spot as well. And I'd be okay with that too. He's fresh because he didn't play much in midweek. He's getting fitter and he's a class act. I know people are saying you got to leave him out because he's not up to speed. Well, let's get him up to speed. And if someone's not having a good enough game, they can get pulled and we've got options to replace them. So fair to say, in midfield, Arne has plenty of alternative options that can all do a similar style job to what we saw in Germany. Up front, I'm guessing Isak is going to be out, I'm not sure, but Ekitike is an absolute must. He's been sensational and he simply can't be dropped anymore. As well, Cody Gakpo is another one where I'll hold my hands up. Much improved on Wednesday, but he was much improved in his industry. He didn't let them out. I was thrilled, I said in my last video, when he went for a duel and it was a scrap and he won it and he came away with the ball and got the fella booked. That's what we need to see from him, because his technical skills and his goal scoring ability have never been in question. Just keep the aggression going. So I think he's a guaranteed starter. 3 goals in his last 3 games and assists as well. The final position, well, I think it's likely going to be Mo Salah, who only played a bit part on Wednesday. And with Isak out, if Isak is out, I think Salah starts, because Slot doesn't start Chiesa. He just doesn't. It's been an ongoing theme. But if Salah does start, and honestly I'd be surprised if he doesn't, he cannot give another anonymous performance like the ones he's given this season. He has to put in the same type of shift as what he saw from the rest of the squad the other night. And he has to pass to players in better positions. To score personal goals can never or should never take precedence over the goals of the team. And if he does start, and if he doesn't put it in, and if he is anonymous, Chiesa is ready, willing and able to come in and fill that spot. So it goes without saying, this one is absolutely huge. We've lost a lot of away games, 6 in our last 17, a lot of them in the Premier League. And we cannot afford another defeat at this early stage. We really can't afford a defeat, and we really can't afford a draw either. We've got to get 3 points on the board after our recent run of results. We can't go behind again for a 6th consecutive game. And wouldn't a first clean sheet in 8 be a refreshing idea? We can't have a pedestrian first half. We must match Brentford's high energy game, and that's what they're going to bring. The crowd, it's Liverpool. Their crowd is going to be well up for it, as all crowds are. But even more so because, you know, they're the minnows against the big boys, and they're going to be roaring them on. We've got to match the energy of the crowd and the energy that Brentford are going to bring, because they have got fast forwards. And let's face it, quality-wise, we're streets ahead of them. Player for player, man for man, we're streets ahead of them. But quality without industry doesn't win games. So that industry that we saw the other day, that high press, that closing down, that winning the duels, that aggressive high energy on front foot football, all has to be in display. Otherwise it could be another tough day. So let's see all of that, Reds. Let's see all of that energy, all that ambition, all that drive, all that determination, all that will to win from the first minute to the last. And if we do that, I'm sure we'll be just fine on Saturday and we can walk away with the 3 points. You never walk alone. See you after the game. Cheers. Ta-ra.